Segment 3, Gold and Black Live. Brian Newbert joins me back fresh off the road, at least 2 miles. He's on the road plenty, but 2 miles down to Mackey Arena. The Boilermakers get ready for Penn State tomorrow at noon. Coach Gene Cady alluded it's a celebration of not only Gene Cady bobblehead day, but he'll be honored at halftime. But really a game tomorrow that you just have to be careful in this league. You better not take for granted. Penn State can be dangerous.
Yeah, Purdue obviously is coming off a big win against Illinois. This is that dreaded noon start on Saturday.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of half awake. Though I don't think Purdue's got to worry about that as much anymore than they used to. But got a big game coming at Michigan State. You can't take this Penn State team lightly. If Purdue does, they've got a real problem because this is a Penn State team that has some good young talent that has been able to keep games really close, even though they've not been a particularly efficient offensive team. I think they play good defense. They give a good effort most of the time, which is not always the case for young teams.
Yeah.
They can be inconsistent that way. But when you look at their results, they've beaten Michigan State. They've beaten the same Minnesota team that won in Mackey Arena. And they've lost a couple of close games at Michigan and at Indiana just now. Obviously, there's circumstances at play versus Indiana and State College, but this is a team that has been more competitive than their non-conference results suggested they would be, and their 3-3 Big Ten record suggests they have been.
Now, they've been patient with Pat Chambers there, though a coach I actually really like in terms of just his intensity and what how he seems to handle himself. Is this a program, again, there haven't been many times since it's joined the Big Ten where they really have been a contender in the upper half of the league, maybe only 2 or 3 times where they've really been in the thick of things. But again, he's recruited well enough that they seem to be behind him and enough that they're not totally out of the realm of possibility of making a run to the tournament. I know they have a long way to go, but
yeah, the non-conference season really hurt them.
But they still are, they're very, very competitive down there, and I think he's a big part of that.
And they should get better through the course of the season. They're starting, I think, 3 freshmen.
Yeah.
They're bringing a redshirt freshman off the bench. They have a sophomore playing off for them. This is a team that through the course of the season should get better. And when you're Purdue, you just hope that eureka moment doesn't come tomorrow. I don't think they can score enough to pull an upset tomorrow, but Purdue better not let its guard down because this is a capable team.
Caleb Biggie Swanigan has been terrific. Isaac Haas played very, very well, one of his best games of his career at Purdue, certainly against Illinois. Do you sense one thing we get a lot of questions about that rotation and where Purdue is with that, and Smotherman certainly has gotten maybe the short end of that stick in terms of playing time. Yet Spike Albrecht still in the rotation. How do you see? Do you see that going to be continual trimming, or how do you see that Matt Painter is going to play this out?
Well, I don't think Painter is going into these games with as much of a template as I think he used to. I think he has admitted this, that he's going into these games. Admitted's probably the wrong word.
Yeah.
It sounds like this is something salacious. It's not. He's mentioned the fact that he's going into these games with a more open mind about his personnel management and just kind of going with the flow a little bit more, trying to stick with whatever he feels works at that time as opposed to sticking to some sort of preordained plan. Regarding Basil Smotherman, Caleb Swanigan and Vincent Edwards are good. They're very good. And the change in the starting lineup, moving Swanigan to the 5 and moving Vince Edwards into the 4, that jacks with the rotations a little bit at the 4. When Smotherman's in the game, you notice the skill drop-off offensively. I think it impacts Purdue for the worse from an offensive perspective when he's in there. And I think he breaks down on defense more than he is allowed to in that sort of role. And I just think he's behind 2 really good players, and there are clear drop-offs in certain phases of the game when he's in the game. He's really athletic, obviously, but he doesn't always use his athleticism to his advantage because he's not as detail-oriented as maybe he could otherwise be. Spike Albrecht is clearly playing himself back into shape here. Now, Carson Edwards logged a lot of backup point guard minutes while Spike Albrecht was out, but Purdue can move away from that now that Spike Albrecht is back and seems to be playing himself back into form. Something to understand about Spike Albrecht, too, is he missed a lot of time before this season. Yeah, he was clearly a work in progress before he hurt his back, and then he misses 7 games, however many games it was.
7, yeah.
this is a guy who is probably basically in late summer form right now. And the middle of the Big Ten season is not exactly the time to be playing yourself back into shape. So I thought the Illinois game was kind of a breakout moment for him because he got to play 15 minutes. He looked confident. He looked aggressive. He looked healthy. He played with some of that flair, people remember him for at Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be trending upward. What that does to Purdue's rotation, I don't know. I guess it's up to him.
Yeah. Obviously, the Boilermakers will hit the road after Saturday. They will travel to, the Boilermakers travel to Michigan State on Tuesday, then Nebraska the following Sunday. What do you make of that? And the last question on basketball, then I want to hit a little bit on football recruiting before we say goodbye. But what do you think about the fact that this is the meat of the schedule now, at least for road games, and the fact that after tomorrow Purdue only has 4 of its 11 games at home? I mean, does that been a lot of talk about how many road teams have won around the country this year? This team should be somewhat weatherproof, even though the competition will be good on the road.
Yeah, it hasn't been weatherproof.
Yeah.
It's been Purdue's been shaky in 2 Big Ten road games, obviously, and that doesn't bode well moving forward because if Purdue's going to be in this Big Ten race, they're going to have to win a lot of games on the road in a lot more difficult environments than Ohio State and Iowa. The Ohio State game, there was nobody there.
Yeah.
The Iowa game, the students were gone. There were thousands of empty seats in the end zone,
Yeah.
so to speak, and that's nothing. That's going to be completely different than what they're going to face in East Lansing. That's going to be completely different than what they face in Bloomington. That's going to be completely different than what they face in College Park. Purdue clearly has to grow up and play well on the road because it's not going to get the sort of NCAA seed. It's certainly not going to win the Big Ten if it can't win some of these really difficult games on the road. So Purdue's got a lot to prove there. They've played well at home for the most part, but when you look at their road results this year, throw in the Louisville game when they basically played themselves out of the game in the first few minutes of the game, just like they did in Bloomington last year. Same sort of arc in the game. But Purdue's got a lot to prove playing. I shouldn't say playing away from Mackey Arena because they're 3-0 on neutral courts, but playing on somebody else's home floor. Purdue has not played. The results to this point have not been positive indicators of what Purdue hopes is coming.
Yeah, and that's going to be a storyline we're going to watch. Okay, football recruiting this weekend. Obviously, another big weekend for Coach Jeff Brom as he puts this class together. 17 commitments so far, and we talked about it on the site this week, a couple of occasions. What do you just an overall vibe on where he is, and we don't know exactly how many guys are coming in, but it is a big weekend, and he's still trying to close out this class.
Yeah, and Purdue's waiting on some answers, too, from last weekend, too. That's an important part of this. I think this class ultimately probably gets judged on what sort of instant impact it can make in terms of helping Purdue get to a competitive level faster than it might otherwise. You look at what they've done in the junior college ranks. Purdue's gone after some fifth-year transfers, Corey Winfield in the secondary, for one. There's some other positions they're looking at fifth-year guys at. Purdue had the 2 junior college wide receivers in last week, Isaac Zico and Terry Wright, waiting on decisions from them. I think Purdue's got to get at least 1 junior college wide receiver. They're going to add a number of grown men in the secondary between TJ Jallow, who's already signed, and we expect them to get McKelty Williams, the former Notre Dame player. Waiting on Corey Winfield from Syracuse, who will visit next weekend. This weekend, I'd expect a lot of linemen. Purdue needs some offensive linemen. I know some things have shaken off various trees around the coaching carousel. There's some guys who were committed to Minnesota who are now available. Javon Hawes, a wide receiver from Georgia, who was committed to Minnesota, I think is coming this weekend. There's a middle linebacker, Sterling Jones, who's coming. Purdue needs a linebacker. They've got a couple of them all lined up here. So I would expect this to be a largely lineman and defense heavy weekend.
Yeah, and they still are planning to have another big weekend next weekend in theory too, as it leads into signing day. Is that still the way you understand it?
So they'll have a number of visitors next weekend, and then got a couple of guys saying that they're going to take visits after signing day. Terry Wright, the junior college player, Corey Winfield, the fifth-year transfer. There's no reason they can't do that. It's just you don't normally see players do that. Now, Corey Winfield, there's no reason he has to sign by signing day. He's a fifth-year transfer who can't go wherever he's going until summer anyway.
Yeah.
But you don't ordinarily see guys just saying, I'm going to wait past signing day.
Yeah. An interesting storyline that will be much more on Gold and Black with that. All right, we are out of time for the show this week. I want to thank certainly Coach Gene Cady for taking the time to join us. Also, Stacy Clarity for all her insight in segment 1, and Brian Newbert as well. Want to thank Cammie and Allie, and also Gordon Jackson for all your help today. I know it's been a busy day here at WLFI and being able to fit us in. Triple X. Want to thank our sponsors, Triple X, on the hill but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. John Basham and Basham Reynolds, Hilton Garden Inn, Christy Kuntz, and the good folks down there. State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. Also been a great supporter of our show over the years, and we're grateful for that. We will be back next week. I know Jerry Palm will be one of our guests. We're going to start the talk of NCAA seedings and all that kind of good stuff that Jerry will be available over phone. We'll also have, I'm sure, another guest or two as we lead into our January 27th show. All right, thanks again for watching, and have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week on Gold and Black Live.